kia ora students, you should be here if you need to remind yourself of how to find an opening quote for your essay. So we've chosen our question, we've worked out what the question is asking, you've planned your essay, now you're up to step 4, opening quote. Remember that's our question, and here is how I recommend you find an opening quote. So remember how I talked about coming up with a thesis statement, and I highlighted those words: develop, personal, leave behind, innocent childhood wisdom, deeper understanding, way of life. These are the words that I would highlight from my plan to then try and find a sort of theme along which lines to find my quote. I recommend you use Goodreads. Another good place is Wikiquotes. You must find a quote that is brief. You must check that the person is important. That is subjective, and so if you're not sure, see me. But in terms of, say for example you found a quote by like Katy Perry and it was just her song lyrics, I would not count that as important. If, however, you found a quote by Katy Perry in an interview talking about something like feminism, then you would say that it is important, because Katy Perry can actually be quite an articulate, intelligent person. But in terms of her pop star persona and her writing of lyrics, which she doesn't actually write, it's not so important. So that's the kind of thing you actually have to work out. Did this person actually say this? That's the next part. And is it actually important? So really important to check that they really said it. A lot of what you'll find on Goodreads and Wikiquotes is inaccurate. So you need to find the original source. So once you've found the quote, then search Google to see if the person actually said what they supposedly said. So a really good example would be if you do find something that, say, a singer supposedly said, find out, is it from a song that they wrote? Did they actually write the song? So you look at someone like Taylor Swift, she does write her own lyrics. You look at somebody like Britney Spears, I don't think she would have ever written any of her lyrics, all written by lots of other different people. So you may want to still use it, but you have to find out who originally actually wrote it. Another really good example is quotes like, be the change you wish to see in the world. People attribute that to Mahatma Gandhi, and they also attribute it to Nelson Mandela, but apparently neither of them said it, and it's just some saying that has kind of evolved, and then people say that famous people said it, but actually they didn't. So you've got to check that these things are actually from the person that you're claiming they come from. And lastly, of course, it's got to be relevant. It's got to actually have something to do with what you're talking about. So here's one that I found that it's different from the one I use in the actual practice essay, but it's just to show you that there's a range of quotes out there that can work. So I found, wisdom comes not from age, but from education and learning. And that's from the author Anton Chekhov. Super, super important, super famous. He was Russian, around in the late 19th century, I think, early 20th century, a playwright or an author. See, I can't even remember. That's terrible. I'm an English teacher. I do know, however, that he is attributed with the concept of Chekhov's gun, which is not relevant to The Giver, but will be relevant in the Hunger Games. Chekhov's gun is the concept that if at some point during a story you see or are told about a weapon that is not used right then and there, you know, foreshadowing, that it is going to be used at some point. So in one of his stories there was a gun over a mantelpiece, and it was referred to a couple of different times, and you just know that at some point in the story Chekhov's gun is going to be used. It doesn't always have to be a gun, of course. Bonus points, if during our study of the Hunger Games you can put up your hand and say, that is Chekhov's gun, I will call home and tell your parents how awesome you are. Completely irrelevant to choosing an opening quote, but it will prove that you've been watching this and listening to me. and I'll be very proud. So, choosing an opening quote can add a whole lot of pizzazz to your writing. It can hook your reader in, but huge caveat, if you do not reword the quote at the end of your conclusion, then you may as well never have included it in the first place. So make sure that you do watch that video about writing a conclusion and that you reword this quote in your own words. If I were you, once you've now chosen your opening quote, I would go and watch that tutorial and actually write that sentence now while the reason that you chose the quote itself is fresh in your mind. And then that way you can make a really effective final statement for your essay. You can tweak it later, obviously, but I think, the first and the last sentences of your essay are so important, and very often students don't pay much attention to them at all. So go away and choose your opening quote. I recommend Goodreads or Wikiquotes. Make sure it's brief. You don't want to have to remember any more than 10 words. And check that it's important, check that the person who said it is important, and check that they really actually said it. Good luck with that. Once you've done it, I really recommend you go and watch the video about conclusions so that you can write a really fantastic final sentence.